So, this is what we sacrificed Hellboy 3 for, huh? I'm taking this approach for the Hellboy 2019 reboot, an approach I haven't taken to reviewing theatrical films in a very long time because I just don't feel like putting that much effort into setting up my microphone and then finding a bunch of still images to use for a video. Why should I put in any effort if they didn't put in much effort themselves? Yeah, this movie is not good. Is it the worst comic book movie ever? No, it's not. There are still worse ones out there. But it's still bad. This is not what fans have been waiting for. I mean, good grief. I even kind of called it. I said from the very beginning, I was not sure about this. And I especially wasn't sure after I saw that first trailer. But even knowing I was right, I still can't really say I feel vindicated, at least not completely, because the result is still a disappointing movie. I don't even know where to begin. Actually, how about we begin with the plot? Or what the movie claims to be the plot, because this movie has some pretty severe ADD. In theory, there's a plot. It's adapting the Wild Hunt storyline, but only when it decides to focus on it, which is very infrequently. Otherwise, this movie almost feels like it's trying to be an anthology film without actually committing to it. It's somewhere between anthology film and single plot feature, where there's a whole bunch of different scenarios that happen throughout the movie, and it's all Frankenstein together, rarely with any rhyme or reason to it, and the whole thing just winds up feeling directionless. Like, starts off like we're going in a particular direction, and then it's going off in a different direction, and then that branches off into a different direction of its own before coming back to that first direction, and then something else happens, and the movie just can't make up its mind on what it wants to be about, so it decides to be about everything, and as a result is about nothing. Yeah, I'm not exaggerating. Even the way they introduce Hellboy's origin, which, yes, because it's a reboot, they have to do the origin story again, completely shoehorned in. It has no reason to be there. I mean, in the grander sense, it has a reason to be there because it ties in somewhat, but it's not naturally included. And furthermore, the grand irony of it all is that even though this movie is technically a reboot and meant to be the first of a series, it feels like the third Hellboy movie in a lot of ways. It feels like there should have been at least 2 movies building up to it. And no, it has no connection to the other 2 Hellboy movies, so that doesn't count. But seriously, there's so much going into this movie that ties into the grander story that you know from the comics or from the first 2 movies, that it kind of feels like you're being thrust into the middle of a series without really knowing what's going on, and not in a fun Buckaroo Banzai kind of way. More in an annoying, why do I feel like I'm just coming in late kind of way. It's not a good way to tell the story, not in any way, shape, or form. And bear in mind, that's just the plot. I'm not even getting to the other stuff, like the reason this movie is R-rated. Yeah, that's another thing that kind of bothers me. This movie, from the outset, said it was going to be a darker R-rated take, full horror movie. They were going to try and be actually intense and dark, and they did it in all the wrong ways. Like, the original Hellboy comics, I said in a previous video, I could see those being R-rated, but not because of, like, graphic content, more because of what they are about, because they deal with some pretty dark and heavy stuff. from real-world things like Nazis and cultists to supernatural concepts like hell. I mean, come on. But at the same time, I mean, you don't normally think of those things as being especially R-rated, but they can be if they're done right. Sometimes it is just about the themes, but here, Hellboy 2019 seems to be the kind of movie that mistakes dark with edgy. That's what this movie feels like. It feels like it was written by a teenager who just figured out what HBO is and saw his first HBO series and has therefore decided he knows what adult entertainment is like without really understanding what adult entertainment is like. And therefore he believes, I am going to make a movie that's mature and it's going to have blood and guts everywhere. And the characters are going to say all the words my mom doesn't want me to say at the dinner table. And I'm not actually going to include any nudity because I'm actually terrified of girls. But this will really boost my confidence if it works. So I'm going to be intense. I'm going to be an adult. And it winds up falling completely flat because this movie just isn't mature. It's immature. Yes, it's gory, really gory at times, but not in an impactful way. I mean, some of the most effective violence I've ever seen in film actually isn't that bloody. When it tries to go for intense offal, it can actually, there is such a thing as too much gore. And not in an ooh, I'm squeamish kind of way. I mean in an that just has lost me kind of way. It's like it's trying too hard to be R-rated. And as a result, it just doesn't feel right. This could have worked as an R-rated movie had they focused more on making it a properly atmospheric horror movie. Instead, it's just have the characters talk like edgy teenagers that swear every other word and splatter some brains and intestines on this wall and call it a day. Boom, R-rated movie. Laziest way to make an R-rated movie if you ask me, but I can go off on a whole other rant about that another day. And like I said, the characters are all written like teenagers. With Hellboy, you can sort of justify it with that whole aging slower, so he's actually a lot younger than he would look in demon years, but at the same time, he is not very mature compared to, because they did that with the Ron Perlman Hellboy as well. He was supposed to be sort of young for demon standards, but he still came across as a better, more likable character than this guy. And I honestly feel kind of bad for David Harbour for playing him, because I saw the interviews. It seems clear he's actually very passionate about Hellboy. He wanted to do this character justice. He was excited to play him. And this is the garbage script he wound up with. I'm sorry, man. If you ever see this, I'm sorry. I really do think you could have made a good Hellboy, but you got saddled with a bad script. I'm sorry. And everyone else is kind of wasted too. I know these people are good actors. I've seen them in other stuff. I know they can act. I know they can give good performances. I know I can really get invested in them. But none of it works, and it's all because of how this movie is structured. It has no soul. That's the problem. This movie is soulless. Irony, right? A movie called Hellboy doesn't have a soul, but it's true. It's just the first two Guillermo del Toro movies. I know, I'm probably annoying the heck out of a lot of you by the way that I keep coming back to them, but those movies had heart. Those movies were clearly made by people who wanted to do this source material justice, and they believed in it, and even with the changes, they wanted to make it as close as possible to the comics in the most respectful way possible. But this movie, I called it in that other video I did. They just want to make their own shared universe. And so this movie is all about setting up that shared universe, just like what Universal did with the Dark Universe when they made The Mummy. And didn't that work out great for them? Oh no, wait, it didn't, because the Dark Universe is being canceled and rebooted again, because it didn't work with Dracula Untold either. You'd think they would have learned. Well, then again, this is Lionsgate. They probably figured it couldn't possibly happen to them, but it did. Boy, did it ever. Like, this movie's full of fan servicey moments. Not that kind, but stuff like you're supposed to look at it and think, cool, I recognize that from the comics. I love seeing that. But I felt nothing. Like, I'm going to go ahead and spoil something for you that's not in any of the trailers. Lobster Johnson is in this movie. Yeah, finally, the Lobster appears on screen. He's played by Thomas Hayden Church. Again, another actor that I know can give a great, compelling performance. And when I saw him, all I could think was, that's it? Oh, look, there he is, but I don't care. I should care, because it's Lobster Johnson, but I feel nothing. It's really unfortunate. And he doesn't even really serve a purpose, mind you. He's in the movie to set up his own movie. That's why he's there. He's there to make sure that we know he exists so that we can come back to the BPRD universe film for Lobster Johnson. That's probably never going to happen because I don't see this movie doing very well. But that's just one example. There are so many other examples I could name. From the very last shot of the movie, which I won't spoil, but it was not worth it, to the post-credits scene, which I guess was supposed to set up Rasputin, but it was just so poorly mishandled. I don't even know what they were hoping to do by that, but yeah, it was not worth staying through the credits for it. You want to know the real irony? There was no reason to not make Hellboy 3. Because I've thought about this, and there really is no reason that we couldn't have just gotten Hellboy 3. In theory, at least. I know why they didn't make Hellboy 3, and I'll get to that in a moment, but just stick with me on this for now. The fact that Hellboy got rebooted in the movies at all means that the Lionsgate, the studio, saw potential for there to be a big audience for it. They figured people liked the Hellboy movies. Hellboy has a significant fan base for a character who's not owned by DC or Marvel. Technically, he's an independently owned character. Dark Horse just distributes those books. So they figure there is a justification to make a Hellboy movie in live action and spend that money so they can make back a profit. So with that in mind, there was nothing in the world, technically speaking, that should have prevented the making of Hellboy 3 with Guillermo del Toro and Ron Perlman and all the others. So why didn't we get it? I can think of two reasons. First of all, there's the fact that Guillermo del Toro just seems to be the enemy of big studios. For some reason. It's like they'll bring him in, they'll go, hey, yeah, we want you here, make this movie for us. And then after the movie comes out, they're suddenly going, yeah, Guillermo, we'll sure as heck get on greenlighting that sequel any day now. How long do we have to keep this up before he goes away? I don't know what it is. Does he have horrible body odor or something? Because he makes great movies. I can't imagine what else would drive him away. Well, actually I can, because he is exactly the kind of director who has a very specific vision and will fight for it. And producers don't want that. Even when he gets results, they don't want it. Of course, now he's the guy who made that one Fish movie that won all of the awards and made all of the money. So every studio that's dropped him is probably kicking themselves now, and I'm sure Lionsgate and Mike Mignola are to be added to that list. Anyway, getting back to the point, the other reason would be because Hellboy 3 was meant to end the story. It was meant to be the final film in the trilogy. We all know that. It would have been the conclusion. And I get it. Lionsgate would not want to get the rights and then produce the end of a story with no hope for a franchise. Of course they're not going to want that. They want to keep making money off of this stuff. They'd rather keep making money with average movies for eternity than make a lot of money with one great movie one time. So I get it, but that doesn't mean they made the right decision here. Clearly they did not. This movie was just so bad in so many ways. Even the music was like this weird attempt at being like Marvel music, but with more heavy metal, which I guess is more appropriate for the kind of subject matter, but it always felt misplaced. It didn't feel right whenever they were doing the musical cues. And that's just the licensed music. The actual soundtrack wasn't much better. But unfortunately, this is the result we got. Lionsgate wanted to make Hellboy movies, but they didn't want to make the last Hellboy movie, even though that's what we were all waiting for. So instead, they went with this direction instead. And the craziest part of all to me is that Mike Mignola was behind this 100%. After working directly with Guillermo del Toro on his movies, suddenly he was abandoning them. He completely let go of that and hooked onto this movie. It's like, yes, this movie's going to be closer to the comics. This is what I want with my vision. What did they offer you, Mike? What was it that suddenly made you go, who is this Guillermo El Taco you're talking about? I'm supporting this movie instead. I don't want a third Hellboy movie with them. Whatever they offered you, I hope it was worth it, because this is yet another dead franchise with your name attached to it. And I don't like saying that because I wanted to see The Amazing Screw-On Head get that animated series on Sci-Fi, but it's just so disappointing. That's the ultimate word. This is disappointing. I know that I annoyed quite a few people when I advised them not to go see Pacific Rim Uprising, but I'm going to do it again here. Please, please do not go and see Hellboy 2019. This is the sort of hackery that should not be rewarded. If you go and see it, you're basically saying you want to see more movies like it. And this is not Hellboy. This is some sick teenager's impression of Hellboy. It's not true to the comics, despite what people say. I'm not even entirely sure who it was made for, but it's not a good film, and I would strongly advise you not to see it. If you do, that's your choice. It's your money and your time. Waste it however you want, but don't say I didn't warn you, because I did. I've warned you. This is the whole point of this video. There's gonna be a lot of bad word of mouth here, and the only good I could ever see potentially coming from the existence of Hellboy 2019 is some sort of Ghostbusters scenario where the reboot is so poorly received that the third sequel gets greenlit anyway. I mean, I don't necessarily think I should put any chips on that particular square, but stranger things have happened. Hellboy can be realized through a mixture of digital and practical, considering that Ron Perlman's getting a bit on in years by now and probably can't do that extensive makeup anymore. But that's the only good thing that I could ever see potentially coming from it, and I don't even think that's going to happen. Well, I've warned you. I have given you my advice. It's your call now if you really want to see it, but I still don't think you should. Frankly, you'd be better off rewatching the original live-action movies. Heck, you'd be better off watching the animated movies that were made between them, which I was going to post a review on, but then it got blocked worldwide for completely stupid reasons, so I'm not exactly happy with how YouTube is run at the moment, but that's beside the point. Point is, you're better off watching the original Hellboy stuff or going back to the original comics than you are seeing this reboot. If you really want to see it out of morbid curiosity, wait till it's on Netflix or something. It's not worth seeing in the theater. Not at all. Well, there are my 2 cents. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.